welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a beer from Anchorage Brewing Company. It's certainly been a while, of course based in Anchorage, Alaska, and today's beer in question is called Open Up More. It's a blend of barley wine and imperial stout, though it is, I think, 2 parts barley wine, 1 part stout. Regardless, it's a blended beer. For my classification purposes, I'm going to call it a barley wine. 15.5% ABV on this one. And this is bourbon barrel aged variants that were aged in the barrels for 1 to 1.5 years. And the specific ratios on here, vintage, double oaked barley wine, and imperial stout. Across a variety of different bourbon barrels. Now this, as always, has some really cool label art, so I'll try to slowly rotate this. It's got their classic kind of skeleton theme going on. Then kind of interesting, it looks like a broken canvas or picture frame with some very bright red entrail looking sinewy stuff spilling out of it. It's kind of creepy, but cool artwork as always. And Massive Face is the artist on this one. So keeping true to style. We've got our trusty stout glass here. We've got our trusty pointy end of our bottle opener, since this is wax dipped, of course. So we'll score underneath the edge as always. All right, pop that right off. Clean that little bit off. Then we'll get this popped right there. Just double checking the rim of the wax. So I'm getting a small bit dripping in. So nice glass. Let's get this poured right in. Very dark, very thick, as expected. It is glugging away, dark and thick. And we'll get the whole thing in there. We'll see how good of a head it forms. Anchorage's beers tend to be, on their barley wines and stouts, pretty active in terms of carbonation, and they do tend to collapse quickly. So I am going to get right up on this real quick for a sniff before we do anything else. Oh yeah. Wow, yeah. So I can really smell the bourbon on this. There's a lot of molasses notes coming out of it and a fair bit of vanilla. In tandem with that, yes, I'm getting a mix of classic barley wine and imperial stout aromas coming off of this. There is some underlying caramelly, toffee, and kind of plummy, figgy, deeper dark fruit like I'd expect to smell in a barley wine, but I'm also getting a lot of underpinning of roast, which I'm guessing is coming from the imperial stout. So regardless, it smells absolutely fantastic. Glad I got the information out that I wanted because, yeah, this is just how it goes on some of their bigger, darker beers like this. They're just very active in terms of carbonation, which you don't always see, and they tend to very quickly collapse the head. So just the tiniest vestiges of a pad floating on top and the tiniest vestige of cling on the side. Visually, yeah, this is pitch black, even though it is a barley wine imperial stout blend. The stout base to it is going to be so dark it's just going to override the caramel color on the barley wine. But regardless, oh yeah, smells great, looks great. Let's just jump right in and see what this one's about. Oof. Oof in the best way possible. That's a walloping wall of flavor intensity the instant you swallow. Okay. Yeah. Every time I have one from Anchorage like this, I'm a happy guy. So let's first talk about the weight and the mouthfeel. It's 15.5%. It feels very heavy on this beer. You can really feel the weight of it, and it feels extremely resistant. There is a boatload of viscosity on this when you move around the palate. It does not get creamy, does not get silky, it does not get foamy. You can just really feel the thickness and resistance of the beer and the weight as soon as you swallow. It's a very big beer. Now, in terms of flavor profile, immediately up front, you're met with the barrels. That's the first sensation that hits you, and it's just whack. Just running into the barrel brick wall. It's huge. Tastes distinctly of bourbon. You get that nice spirit back, and it does have this wonderful warming sensation as it goes down. It doesn't taste boozy, but you distinctly know it's bourbon barrels, and you get that nice warming. As soon as that first burst up front backs off in its initial intensity at about the 1.5-2 second mark, the underlying malt bill and cross blending of the beer styles really starts to open up. So what I smelled on the nose, in particular, the molasses, is really coming through. There's also a nice bit of char that could be coming out of the stout malt bill itself, or it could obviously be coming from the bourbon barrel aged, the bourbon barrels themselves that they aged the beer in. Either way, it's got a real intensity of richness and roastiness and bits of earthiness. Out of the barley wine side, really, it's more of the slight kind of figgy accents and plum accents that pop in with a little more of the lighter caramelization. But I would definitely say, in terms of the overall sugary caramelization kind of theme, it definitely is leaning more heavily on the molasses side in this one than kind of lighter caramelization on any sugars. And it's very nice. It's a big, big beer. It's a big roasty beer. There's a lot of bold, in-your-face flavors that immediately pop. And it pairs beautifully with just the underlying breadth and thickness and weight of this beer. It's very, very nice. It pairs beautifully. So as always, I'm going to jump back in for a second sip. We'll let everything re-intensify. We'll make sure we didn't miss anything, and then we'll talk about the balance and the finish. Take two. Big barrel up front, big spirit, bourbon kiss up front, nice warming, big rich molasses notes popping out of this, slight fruitiness from these richer fruit, plum, fig. There's a big bit of roasty, earthy underpinning to this too. I got a little bit of first sip. On second sip, the intensity of that roast is really popping out, and there's actually a decent bit of bitters coming out of that. I mean, we're not talking IPA territory, but you can really sense it. Nice bit of char, nice underpinning. There's slight suggestions of a coffee undercurrent that I didn't catch on the first sip, and kind of paired with just this rotating around lingering bits of caramelized sugar and these vanilla notes, these ribbons of molasses. It really, really pairs extremely well. It's a very, very nice beer. It's a very intense beer. There's a lot of nuance and flavors popping in and out of one another, and it just works. Having a big, bold, in-your-face intensity of flavor works in a beer that's got this much breadth and this much thickness. It just pairs extremely well together. Now, in terms of balance, what would I say about this? Well, it's a balance between two styles that went in to make the blend, and of course the various bourbon barrels that they used. True to form, Anchorage does a great job. The barrels that they selected, however long they left them in, it works extremely well with this beer. How do I like the balance then between the two contrasting styles? I think it's great. I love a good barley wine. I love a good stout. I think pairing the two together brings out a lot of similarities, but it also helps to kind of highlight their separate nuances, and then having them ebbing and flowing in together makes for a really, really, really nice beer drinking experience. I wouldn't change a thing about the balance on this. I think they absolutely nailed it. Now, finally, the finish. This is a big, high ABV, barrel-aged imperial beer from Anchorage. It's got a long finish, very, very long. On this one, you are definitely left with lingering bits of that underlying bourbon barrel, and then that kind of caramelized sugar molasses note turns slightly more sweet on the back end, mixed with a little bit of vanilla, but then there's still this underlying char and roast coming out of the malt bill as well. So you get a little bit of most of what you got in the flavor profile, and they're all kind of on an even playing field all the way to the end. I would say it's about a minute and a half, 2 minutes before each sip finally lingers away to nothing. It's got a big intensity, it's thick, it does coat the palate very, very well, so it does have a nice, long, wet, round finish. Guys, this is another winner from Anchorage. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, count my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Anchorage Brewing Company's Open Up More, a blended beer. You could call it a barley wine, blended barley wine, imperial stout, blended imperial stout, strong ale. A lot of different classifications you could give it, but it was a bourbon barrel-aged variant of a blend of barley wines and imperial stouts. This one clocked in at 15.5% ABV. Anchorage Brewing is, of course, based in Anchorage, Alaska. So guys, this was just another one in a very, very long line of really big dark beers that I've had from Anchorage that are just absolutely top marks, top marks. I mean, they just do an extremely, extremely good job. There are always, a few little quirks about them compared to some of their other counterparts out in the marketplace. But in general, I really, really like what they're doing with their big dark beer game. And this beer in question was no different from that pattern. So going through the scores, there's only one score that did not get a perfect score. And this is indeed the category on their big dark beers that gets hit the most often. And that is the head and the retention. Look, it kind of is what it is, guys. This had a little bit more going against it since it also was a blend of barley wine and imperial stout. Imperial stouts on their own tend to do a bit better than barley wines just based on how active carbonation is on a barley wine. This was no different. It tried to form a head at the beginning, but it was gone almost as quickly as you poured it. It's just super thick. It was active in terms of carbonation, and it collapsed as soon as it was forming. It is what it is, so that is definitely below average. Porter-Home, it is what it is. I give it a 1 out of 10, but that does, of course, leave a perfect 10 out of 10 in the remaining 9 categories. That's aroma, taste, body, mouthfeel, finish, appearance, balance, my subjective thoughts category, and example of style. So the total score on Anchorage Brewing Company's Open Up More is a 91 out of 100. So yeah, guys, this is another one of those where I could nearly call it a perfect beer. I had to rate it how I experienced it. I know this about their beers, Porter-Home. Sometimes you get a great head. Most of the time you really don't. They're just very active in terms of carbonation. It is what it is. For me, does it detract from the beer drinking experience? Personally, no. Others may have different thoughts. But in general, I mean, I just love what they're doing with their big beer game. This was another great example. If you're a fan of their big stouts, barley wines, barrel-aged beers, I mean, just like almost all of them, I could say, this is one to keep on your radar. I did get this one from Tavour, but like I've said, you can also get Anchorage Brewing beers from Craft Shack if you would like an alternate location to try to find them. Regardless, this is another top tier beer, guys. I absolutely loved it, and I would recommend this one all day long. Folks, that is today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications by hitting that bell icon. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.